Good evening. Today is the 22nd of September, 2025. This is Detroit in Black and White presents Reality Strike with Eric Brown. And I have for my guest today a committee member of the Juneteenth Jubilee Detroit event, Chad King, who is also I want to misspeak for you, Chad. I know you are a supporter of the Second Amendment, right? Correct?
Absolutely.
And
That's
also
correct.
a gun trainer.
That's correct.
All right, so give the audience a little bit about yourself as we go
Uh,
into the topics.
yeah. So a lot of what I do is community oriented, community rooted. Whether it's getting people registered to vote, educating people on voter topics, helping people identify issues that may be important to them that they may not have yet articulated. Um, that's on one side of it. Another side of it is making sure that people are able to understand their Second Amendment rights in relation to all their other rights that they have access to, and make sure that as an instructor, uh, make sure people understand the gravity of owning and or carrying a firearm, and make sure that they are understanding of being sober, moral, prudent, responsible, and safe with and around firearms, not only for their own sake, but for their family's sake and for the sake of the community.
Okay, and with that being said, and I introduce Stuart, my other guest, in a minute. But with that being said, Chad, what's your um, opinion on the spike of gun use in the Detroit area?
So, um, I don't know if it's necessarily a spike, but I think it's at a level um, that criminal misuse of firearms is
Okay,
problematic. I'll
all
say it
right,
like that. The criminal misuse of firearms is problematic, but even then, in those certain CVI zones, it's been reduced. One of the other things I do is work with the different CVI groups to offer expertise about programming and safety around firearms. And so, what we see with the implementation of the CVI groups, a couple of years ago, they were granted $10 million, and that netted a savings of about $31 million.
oh wow, I
And
didn't know it was that
that
much.
savings comes from when you calculate the entire cost of a shooting incident. Um, and I'm not talking about a mass shooting, but just like a one-to-one person type of an incident. Each
Right,
one of
right.
those incidents costs roughly about $1 million. When you factor in the cost of police, cost of hospitalization, cost of the court cases, attorney fees, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, all of those things um, total to almost about $1 million. And so with that investment up front of 10 million, saving on the back end 31 million, what it shows is that the CVI, community violence intervention, that type of stuff works, and it is it because it addresses root causes of the criminal misuse of firearms, which is largely economic, which is largely uh, the interpersonal relationships that cause that. So I think that what we see is the criminal misuse of violence. I don't think that that's ever going to go away. I don't think that we're ever going to not have criminals who don't use firearms in an antisocial way to exact antisocial violence. But what we can do is number one, get some folks to reorient their position around firearms and around the idea of respect, really, in interpersonal relationships. We can reorient people uh, towards a position of feeling like they are owed respect or they have to, someone has to earn their respect, to a position of maybe we should give people respect by default and see what happens from there. So I think that's a part of it. Um, and I also think that when you can incentivize peace by way of economic development, jobs, etc., what you find is that people will much rather want to be peaceful than not.
And I like that perspective you talked about with regard to respect by default, and we'll get a little bit more into that when we talk about this Cass King situation, because that was a very interesting situation this past Friday, and they had to end the game and resume the game on Saturday afternoon. Before we go on, let me say hello to all the viewers, and again, I'm basing it on who I see on YouTube. I'm not on the Facebook page simultaneously because there are people on Facebook as well, but I can't see those viewers. So good evening to Karen Winston, Mr. 1213. Good evening. I love it. You know, we ask that everyone that joins on and watch this podcast on the Detroit and Black and White channel that you like, subscribe, and share. And let me introduce Stuart Boswell. Stuart Boswell was my former co-host when we had the show on Cat's internet radio station about 10, 15 years ago, about 12 years ago, Stuart?
It was 2009. So
2009. Okay. It was, it's 2009. Wow. Okay. So it's been more than 15 years ago. But I wanted to bring Stuart on because a lot of people in the Detroit area, particularly if you were a student at Central Michigan, Eastern Michigan, or currently are at Oak University, our hearts were hit with a very untimely death of a man by the name of Glenn McIntosh, who was the Vice President of Student Affairs up at Oak University. Previously to that, he served as the Area Complex Director at Eastern Michigan University. And prior to that, he was at Central Michigan. That's where he graduated from. He worked there before he came on to Eastern Michigan University. And he just touched a lot of lives, a lot of young lives. I mean, he did not have kids himself, but he was referred to as a father, a great father figure to both males and females. A good friend of mine, her son is his godson. And I just found out Saturday another person, Eastern Michigan grad, whose daughter is his goddaughter. So I mean godson, not stepson. So he had an amazing impact on a lot of youth, young men, young women. He was a member of Omega Psi Phi, very prominent in that organization. And he was also a pastor over at Renaissance. Is it Renaissance Unity, Stuart?
Renaissance.
Yeah. So he was a pastor over there. So very, and also a former Men of Excellence recipient for the Michigan Chronicle. So he definitely is someone that impacted a lot of young lives. And you know, Stuart, I know you and him were close. Matter of fact, you were best friends. And I was telling everybody, I just saw him, was about 6 weeks ago when we were at the same event?
At the T-Live Black Tire Fair.
Right. So it was about 6 weeks ago. And we talked, because every time me and him had a chance to talk on the phone or in person, Chad, you know my passion for literacy. And with him being in the educational space, it was always good to chop it up with him to just see about the college level and how the literacy crisis, educational crisis was impacting people going on to college. So definitely, Stuart, you can, kick off the tribute to him. You knew him better than both myself and Chad. He's just a great guy. I mean, I met him through you, actually. So, yeah, just a great guy. I remember him from Eastern, but, when he was a dorm director, he stayed away from dorm director. So,
yeah, man. But yeah, I've known Glenn over 30 years. And I met him at the gym because he's an avid workout. He was a bodybuilder, and he was Mr. Michigan, Mr. Ironman. He won several other bodybuilding awards, and he was, just like he was in education, he was excellent in that too. And so, I just think Glenn is is the epitome of what an educator should be, and his ability to relate to the students, to build programs around students, particularly black men and young women. I always, when somebody comes to me talking about they want to go to college, I always say, Oakland is a great choice because I know what they do with young black students. They wrap their arms around them and they make sure that they have an avenue to go to when they're having issues. And he did that. I saw him do that over the years. I saw him pay, buy students books, pay students tuition. As a matter of fact, I had a friend of mine text me and was talking about his daughter was one of the first recipients of his scholarship endowment.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But she had a friend who had got their scholarship max. Well, Glenn paid for her whole semester of nursing school.
Wow.
And that's not unusual. That's not unusual for him. And he was always somebody that was challenging students to do better and to be excellent. And he didn't give them excuses. Racism wasn't an excuse. Mother, father issues wasn't an excuse. He would hold them accountable, but they knew that they loved him. And every student on that campus had his personal phone number.
Wow.
Having issues. That's what kind of guy he was.
Oh, he was a great guy, because one of the longest conversations we had most recently when you were in the hospital over at Henry Ford in Grosse Pointe, and we happened to be visiting you at the same time, and we just had a very in-depth conversation about education and the differences people see from the high school level to the college level and the preparation or lack thereof. But he made sure that those that were not prepared, by the time they graduated, they were prepared for the next stage in their life. And that was one of his goals, because he saw himself. He was on the front line. He saw, and his perspective from the position that he was in, he was the frontline face of the university when it came to dealing with students.
Exactly.
At Oakland University. Mm-hmm. So he talked about his disappointment about the lack of preparation people had coming from high school to college. And, once he get them, all he could do is make sure that they may not have came in prepared, but he definitely made sure that he left prepared.
Yeah, he did that. He was on the forefront of the growth of Oakland University, and he was definitely one that had put an emphasis on making sure that young Black boys and girls were educated and had the resources to do well. So I had a cousin. She was thinking about going to college, and her choice was between Oakland University and Michigan State. Well, and I told her, I said, well, Michigan State is a used school, and maybe you need to be somewhere smaller where we know that those people there would touch you. They're accessible to you. They will make sure that you're successful. You wouldn't get lost. And so I talked to Glenn. Glenn arranged to have a meeting with her and her parents and me. And, that's one of those things. That's unusual. He's the VP of the university. He's second in charge behind the president. And he took the time to talk to her and her family and then take her over to the Multicultural Center and introduce her to everybody else. And by the time that thing was over, the attentiveness of him and his staff, won her over. At the end of the day, that's where she decided to go. And he said after that, if you have any problems, here's my personal number. Give me a call.
And definitely a great guy. He will be missed, immensely. And, thanks for joining the G Money Hollywood. I'm not a Spartan fan, but I graduated from Eastern Michigan, so I'm assuming you're talking about go green and white to Eastern Michigan University. And he missed so much Oakland University that they have even offered to host his funeral services, which will be next Sunday at 3:00, I think it is 3:00 or 5:00. Wow.
The visitation is 3 to 5, and then the service is at 5.
So that's just how much he meant to Oakland University. Then you see all the tributes that went out after the passing of him. It was just amazing. And again, rest well, Brother McIntosh, you will definitely be missed. I miss my conversation with him for sure. Well, just an amazing man.
They called him Mr. OU because even as the vice president, when he was dean of students, he went to every student event that he can get to. And as vice president, he still attended every student function that he could get to. And I would ask him sometime, I said, man, why don't you take a rest? Why don't your dean of students go do that? But that wasn't, but his charge was he always wanted to be somewhere where the students were, and he wanted to always be able to connect to them, to connect with them, to make sure that they knew that everyone was invested, including themselves, in their success at that university. And he did that for the 30 plus years that I've known him, that young man called me the other day after he heard he had died, and he said, Mr. Glenn McIntosh was a dad to hundreds of young black men who didn't have fathers. He was
Right.
their dad on campus, and he had much respect amongst the student body.
Yeah, because I got a call early Wednesday morning, and I immediately called you, but the person that I got a text. The person that reached out to me, they knew I knew him, and it was just from there I called you, and you were already at the hospital, but just the amount of people that reached out, and even the chairman of the political science department there, the friend that reached out to me, he had sent something to her that she forwarded on to me. And the news was, just like an earthquake hit Oakland University. That's just how much he meant to that university. And then when you go to the Oakland University page and see the tributes from people that graduated, 5, 10, 20, 30 years ago, and talked about the impact that he had on their lives, was just amazing. Same with Eastern Michigan University. I mean, he was just an area complex director at Eastern Michigan University, but he made an amazing impact on the students there. Central Michigan, same thing. After he graduated, he became a member of Omega Psi Phi there in '83, and you have students 42 years later that know who Glenn McIntosh is. Those students over at Central Michigan University. So yeah, he had an amazing impact. So, any last words, Stuart, before we move on to the next topic?
No, I guess I just want to say that it's. You into this into literacy and the importance of education, and I think that we've fallen down as a community when you start talking about that, because like you always talk about, we majoring in the minors, talking about everything peripheral to how do we get our kids to excel in school, and I think Glenn has always pushed, always drove excellence to all of the students that he met, and I think that we as a whole should take that approach. Nobody did it better than him, and I think that if we're associated with any university, that we should do the same thing. Use his model.
Right.
You touch as many students as you can, and you make yourself available to as many students as you can, because that's what he did. That's what he did up until the time that he left here. He was making an impact, which was always his goal, which always was the thing that he talked to me about every single day. I just want to have impact. I just want to change lives. And in this short time on this earth, that's what he did. He touched lives and he changed people.
Yeah, no doubt. He definitely did that. So yeah, appreciate that. So Chad, I want to go back to you for a minute, because you're during the part of your introduction, we talked about gun violence, making sure why people support the Second Amendment right. And it prompted two responses. The first one was, and I'm not sure if you can see the screen, Chad, with the responses. Yeah, guns are the first weapons of mass destruction. And that came from I Love It. And then there's a comment from G Money Hollywood, who's a regular viewer of all the Detroit in Black and White podcasts. And he talked about how much he liked the approach about respect by default. And I like that too. That was my first time hearing that. And I gained so much respect from you, Chad. I mean, I met you, I think 2-3 years ago, and listening to you when you did that interview with Channel 4 News prior to the kickoff of Juneteenth. I mean, you just had a wealth of knowledge. I'm like, man, he a gun manufacturer? Because you know your stuff. I was like, damn. So, and I'm not a gun owner. I'm not really into guns, but listening to you gave me a major appreciation for why people do own guns and using them in the right way. So these comments with regards to guns, we, pivot back to the other three topics we plan on talking about. But when you read those two comments, Chad, and you being such an advocate of the Second Amendment and just responsible gun use, what does this, what do these comments mean to you?
The first comment, I don't really know what exactly to say. I'm not going to be dismissive of it. I think it's, incorrect wholesale that guns are the first weapons of mass destruction. And there's a significant sociological and legal history behind the use of firearms. yeah, there's a significant sociological history, and let me just the sociological history is more so related to projectile weaponry than just exclusively firearms. Like, quite candidly, without some type of projectile weaponry, there would have been no Out of Africa movement. So, when you think about it in that sociological historic context, uh, uh, being able to launch a thing at distance to get food, to hunt, to survive has been a critical development in human history globally. There's never been a society that did not have some type of projectile weapon. So when we say that guns are the first weapons of mass destruction, I think that is trying to box in or pigeonhole firearms within the context of the criminal misuse of them, as opposed and the antisocial use of them, as opposed to the pro-social use of them. So I like to bifurcate between pro-social violence and antisocial violence.
Right.
And I think that saying that they're weapons of mass destruction puts them exclusively in the box of the antisocial uses.
Antisocial, right.
And so that's where I would disagree with that. As it pertains to the second one, that again is something that is an approach that I take personally as an individual, as a man, is that I'm gonna offer respect as a default option. I don't like it. I grew up in a video game era, right? And so when you think about video games, you start with 100 lives, or you start with a full energy bar or whatever. Okay, and as you play the game, as you play a video game or whatever, you're not building up to have a full life, so to speak. You're trying to prevent your energy from being lost. And so if we take that approach and apply it to respect, give everybody else their full bar of respect first. And it's up to them to lose the respect by doing things that are antisocial or being mean, rude, et cetera, et cetera. I think that approach, like I said, that works for me. But within the context of community violence intervention, I think that has the reorientation of people towards that mindset, and additionally the economic development piece of it, providing resources or ability to access resources has been hugely helpful in reducing some of the criminal misuse of firearms in the city of Detroit. And a big one is the orientation around respect. That's huge.
Right. And this last comment is interesting because this is something I would have never thought of. And thanks for joining us also, Mr. Duckett, joining us this evening. Once a quarter, 4 times out of the year, I think that all urban schools from K through 12 should be taught about gun violence and how to properly learn when to use guns once you're eligible.
Yeah. So a couple of things. Number one, there's a statute in the state of Michigan, MCL 381.193, something to that effect. I forget. I think that's what it is. But it allows for the education centered around firearm safety. That's been in statute for a long time. And it states that basically beginning in 3rd grade, students can learn about firearm safety if it's a curriculum modeled after the NRA's Eddie Eagle program. So that's been a statute for a long time. Unfortunately, in the city of Detroit or other urban school districts, that stuff isn't taught. Even though legally it can be, it's permitted per state law. Additionally, recently, there was a recent statute that passed. I forget the MCL number, but there was a recent statute that passed that allowed for school districts to teach firearm safety if taught by a credentialed instructor. And that you have to have the hunter safety education instructor credential to be able to teach that. So that again is a state law that offers that firearms safety and responsible education that can be offered in our schools and our school districts. It's up to the school boards. It's up to the individual schools if they want to do something like that. But it is available and accessible to the districts and the schools if they want to offer that programming up. I think it'll be worthwhile. I think that they should offer it up, considering the prevalence of firearms throughout the country, not just in Detroit, but I'm talking about throughout the entire country.
Right.
We have several millions of gun owners and several more millions of guns in circulation. It's a thing, and that's talking about the ones who own firearms legally and the firearms that are purchased legally and registered. I'm not even talking about the ones that are considered quote unquote illegal rather, excuse me. And so having young people exposed in a safe, healthy, responsible way to firearms education, firearms safety, I think that what happens, it'll pay dividends. Just in Lansing this week, back in May, there was a young student who had a friend who brought a firearm, and because of his firearms education at a young age, he disassembled that firearm so that it could not be used in the school. And then he told someone after the fact. But what that kid did was save lives. Unfortunately, that young man has been expelled from the school district. And folks are advocating for him to get back into school because that's disrupting his learning. But what he did was save lives by using his hunter safety education to disassemble that firearm and make it unusable.
So the one that disassembled, not to cut you off, Chad, but the one that disassembled it is one that got expelled?
Yes.
Wow.
He got expelled.
What was the reason?
He got expelled because he didn't let someone know immediately what was going on. He told someone
so why put the kid that bought the gun to school?
He got expelled as well. He got expelled as well. He wasn't without the punitive response from the district. But my focus on the young man who successfully disabled the firearm was a young black boy.
Yeah, he's a black boy. I saw it. Yeah, sorry, I didn't know the story.
So we disabled that firearm so as to render it unusable, so it couldn't harm anyone. That kind of education is invaluable.
Wow.
So he should absolutely be reinstated back in the school. But that kind of education is so important with our young people. So
Correct.
It's available per state law. It's really a matter of if the districts and the schools themselves and the administration therein want to offer that as a curriculum or program.
And speaking about education, education is valuable. The situation at King and Cass is past Friday. I'm a former athlete. I'm a coach. I've coached when I lived down in North Carolina. The one thing that we always told our players, any league I was involved with, we always told them to respect the other team because they are representing not just school and the letters on their chest, they're also representing their families. So to not shake hands at the beginning of a game was just a very unsportsmanlike act. But in addition to that, I do applaud the referee because he told the King players, either you shake hands or I'll forfeit the game. And I would not have had a problem with them forfeiting the game because that was just unsportsmanlike. And to your point about, respect by default, you have to respect. I mean, then, you have people trying to defend them, saying how social media and the threats and all. I mean, but I'm sure the threats are going both ways. People make it seem like it was just Cass players threatening King players and all this and that. I'm sure the threats were going both ways. And like I had to tell this one young lady today, you have to quit making excuses for actions that should have been better served when it comes to sportsmanship. And either one of you can, follow up on your thoughts.
But at the end of the day, the kids, the coaches decide how the kids going to perform on the field. So are we holding the kids accountable to this, or are we holding the coaches, the teachers of these young men? Because like you, I was an athlete in high school too. So
right.
The coach that sets the environment for that sportsmanship thing, either they teaching it or they allowing it. So what is it? I mean, I don't understand because I didn't really hear about that, but I think it should be more emphasis on who are we allowing to be instructors to our students. And if that's the kind of behavior that they're teaching and promoting, then somebody needs to do something about the King coaches.
Yeah, because I want to assume that, again, as a coach, that they told them, I mean, you do a pregame handshake every game. You said the high school level, you even said the Pee Wee, Pop Warner, PAL level. So I would hope that the coaches told them to shake hands and they went out there and didn't do it. Now, had I been a coach, those that did not shake hands would have been sitting on the bench. That's just me.
Yeah, I think that, rivalries are always going to be tense. And we know that Cat King is always going to be a tense rivalry. So I don't begrudge people being excited and feeling, a level of animus towards either team. However, there is no reason why you don't shake hands before the start of the clock and after that clock hit 3 or 4 zeros.
Yeah, right? You're right. You're right. The end of the game too.
Rivalry can only exist and should only really exist in between the clock. You know what I'm saying? So to not, to not offer that default respect because of a rivalry, I don't. Again, and it's a sports rivalry. It's not like a blood rivalry or something like that. Like these is the Hatfields and McCoys or some craziness, right? It shouldn't be anyway. I think it's unfortunate that the rivalry took a turn for the worse at the onset in that way relative to the level of respect that was shown or not shown.
Right.
It should never, rivalry should never amount to that level of, when you abdicate respect on either side.
Right. And then to G Money Hollywood's perspective, unsportsmanlike conduct is part of the athletic competition. It's going to occur from time to time, especially with rivalries, as you stated, Chad. Unfortunately, I don't think the problem will ever be resolved. And I would disagree with that because I've been to the Cass King game the last 4 or 5 years, and there's never been a situation like it was this past Friday. I'm not sure if it was because of the location and so many more people being there, but you still, I cannot agree with you more, Chad. The start of the game, end of the game. Now, there are going to be some unsportsmanlike conduct, of course, between the first quarter and the last second ticking off of the last quarter. Mm-hmm. But shaking hands is just a respectful thing to do. That's common courtesy. It's like, you walking down the street, you see someone, they might look recognizable. You say, hello, what's up? Denied. It's a universal hello for us, at least in our community. But in the scheme of athletic competition, to not be sportsmanlike, again, you're representing not just that school, you're representing your family as well. And I would hope that everyone's family taught them better when it comes to respecting another man, another human being. These are two black schools playing each other. It's not like it was King against Catholic Central, Cass against Brother Rice. These are two black kids, schools, black kids, black programs playing against each other. And I just think you have to show some level of respect towards your fellow man. If you want to fight after the game, you do that. But at the end of the day, that was just uncalled for. Now, I'm not saying that led to the violence that occurred. People probably didn't even notice the lack of a handshake initially. But it may have, if people did notice it, that may have set the tone for the evening and why things got out of hand in the stands and things of that nature.
Yeah. I just think that, and the comment is in the chat about MSU versus Michigan, Ohio State. I'm an Ohio State guy. So I get it. I understand the rivalries for sure. I believe that, the default position of respect, the rivalry, again, respect as human beings, respect as men, respect as women. That should be the default position. Rivalries happen in the spaces that they happen. They don't have to bleed over to every facet of life, especially when you're talking about athletics.
Right.
When we talk about athletics, it should stay within the context of the field, the court. You know what I mean? It should stay there between the clocks. Anything outside of the clock, it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be. Even
a few years ago, the situation at Michigan when the players from Michigan State attacked, that was after the final second ticked off, and that was in, I worked at U of M, and that was during the way from the end of the game from the field to the locker room.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the day, if another team is better than you, you take your ass whipping like a man and keep it moving. You know, Michigan, Ohio State, they didn't take the ass kicking last year too well. They planted the flag on the field, and that erupted in chaos. But the situation at U of M a few years ago, the game was over with, and a couple of Michigan players walking back to the locker room, some Michigan State players saw them, and they attacked them and actually, hit them with helmets and all that. I mean, that's uncalled for. You should have did that on the field. Maybe you would have lost 49-7. So what happened to that anger? That's that same anger. Where was that during the first second of the game to the last second of the game? So it was ridiculous. Yes, we do know rival. I mean, I went to Detroit Murray Rice. Central was our rival. Actually, King and Cass did not become a rival until a major rival like they are today until they start ascending in the hierarchy of high school football in the Detroit metropolitan area and all of Michigan. But prior to that, they were not those type of rivals because they were in two different divisions back in the day. So I'm not sure how I got to where, well, of course, bragging rights got it to where it is now, but the lack of shaking hands, I mean, that's uncalled for, particularly at that age. That's the sad part about it because you had the quarterback for Cass is only a sophomore, so you had sophomores, juniors and seniors out there. That just set a bad example for the underclassmen on the team. Because some might think that's okay next time because they're going to play again. I mean, they're the best two teams in PSL, so they're going to play in the PSL championship. And hopefully it won't come to the point of them not allowing spectators into the venue to not see the championship PSL game.
Well, at the end of the day, the students are being taught certain behavior. And we're talking about this, man, we all play sports, and rivalry, that's a part of the sport. The violence don't have to come with the rivalry, and especially the disrespect for the other team. It's supposed to be a healthy respect for the other team, but you want to win the game. And I think the ball is being dropped. We're talking about the game and the kids reacting to the game, but somebody was coaching them, somebody teaching them, somebody putting those thoughts in their heads or not taking them out of their heads by saying, look, we're going to compete. We're going to compete hard. We're going to go to win the game, but we respect the other team, but we're going to win. We fight in this game. The coaches, that's where the emphasis should go. Who are teaching these young men? And when the violence broke out, I mean, I don't know what happened in the stands, but as far as on the field and walking onto the field and deciding to shake hands or not shake hands, they didn't just decide to do that, and they didn't wait to the game to do that. They've probably been talking about that all week. And the coaches could have done something about that. And I don't hear anybody, well, I don't know, I haven't read anything about it, but are the coaches going to be held accountable for their behavior of the students that they're supposed to be teaching? I mean,
unfortunately, Stuart and Chad, a lot of the comments centered around kids will be kids. And I'm like, no, you got to teach them at a young age on how to conduct themselves.
Well, kids look at life. There to intervene and teach kids properly. Of course, kids going to be kids. But somebody should have said, no, that's not how we're going to play this week. You save all that energy for the game and play your best game.
Right, for the field, right.
And so the violence that happened in the stands, that's tragic. But then again, that probably goes to they was playing at Wayne State, weren't they? And they probably had more fans than they know, because I know I knew guys was trying to get into the game and they couldn't even get tickets for the game.
Yeah, it sold out, from what I understand, or at least sold to the capacity of what they wanted to allow in the stadium. But one of the, I won't say excuses, but you have the appropriate staff down there as far as security and police and all that, but they're saying that a lot of people, jumped over the fences or climbed the fences and got in, so that's what led to the overcrowding. But there's ways to have avoided that, because last year when the game was at Cass, you had enough police, DPS police. Detroit Public Schools has their own police department, so you had DPS police, you had the Michigan State, not Michigan, Wayne County Sheriff and Detroit Police Department were in various spots to prevent people from scaling the fence. Same thing 2 years ago at King. You had police in strategically located spots to prevent people from scaling the fences. But, it's an unfortunate situation. Usually the PSL championship is over at Northwestern or Renaissance, so it's going to be interesting to see where they play that game this year. The demand was the demand, so that's why they moved it to Wayne State. It wasn't about money, because they don't make a lot of money off of that. Wayne State probably charged them an arm and a leg just to rent the field. It was just about having an opportunity to showcase your best two teams, not just in the city of Detroit, but two of the best teams in the state. Both of them are ranked in the top 10 for the state, regardless of class. So,
hopefully, number one, is he the number one player in the state or number one quarterback?
For the guy Cass?
Yeah.
No, the best player on the team, the quarterback is good. He's a sophomore. The best player on the team is a senior that committed to University of North Carolina. He's considered an athlete because he plays defense and offense. He's good. He was recruited by Michigan, but he decided to go to North Carolina. Last name is Statler. I think it starts with an S, but yeah. So they had, plus, they got a few other Division I players on Cass as well as King. So they do have some great athletes, but you just have to do better next time. Hopefully when the PSL championship come around, it won't be that bad, because both of them most likely will go to the stadium. Both of them end up at Ford Field. You will hope that any and everyone from DPS will be down there cheering for both teams to become state champions.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. They should. Hopefully, because I'm going for Cass since I'm a graduate, so I want them to win green and white.
Well, they won last year. They got a good team. I give it to them. They have a good team, and they have a good team this year. And we'll see. And I'm not really following this one.
What is this about? What's House Field Slaves?
I don't even know what that's about.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Said okay.
What they've been by that, but yeah. So, quick question: did both of you read HR 719?
I have.
Did you read it, Stuart?
No, I didn't.
Okay, that's the current distraction in our community. And I say it's a distraction because there are major things that we need to be addressing. And like I said to someone earlier, Charlie Kirk just happened to be the person that resulted in the bill, it's not a bill, resulted in the resolution being passed. And I guess the controversy is about the amount of Democrats that voted in favor of the resolution. You could, give me your take, Chad.
Well, I'm not mad at the ones who voted for it, but I'm also not mad at the ones who voted against it or decided not to vote for it either. I think it's within their purview, within their right, after reading the text of it,
right,
that they disagree with some stuff that's in the text of the resolution, then they don't have to vote for it. And that's perfectly fine. Had it been me as a person in there, I can't say that I would have voted for the resolution. Just because someone passes away, you certainly don't have to dance on a grave, but you don't have to lionize them either, and you don't have to mourn them either. It's one of those things where you can not say anything at all about them, and that's kind of the approach that I take. I really haven't said a whole lot about it simply because, it's unfortunate for his family. It's terrible that it happened. But I'm also not going to participate in this cult of personality type of mourning for this particular individual. That's just not something that I do generally for people broadly, right? I'm more my family members. I'm more my friends. I might say, "Oh man, that's sad," publicly, but I'm not going to be a person that is gonna mourn a person who's a quote unquote celebrity in any significant way that's going to distract from whatever program or whatever thing I got going on. I do think it's a distraction in the context of, people are too fixated on it And that's on both sides. I think
It's on both sides, right?
I think there's this, you know, unnecessary fixation on it from, you know, the whole spectrum of political thought and ideology. Again, it's unfortunate. You know, it should not have happened. There's not a world where this is a thing that should be acceptable. But it's also okay not to say anything as well, right? You don't have to, again, celebrate this person in the afterlife. You don't have to celebrate somebody dying either. Um, it's okay to focus on the things that are more important.
And I think my position, had I been in Congress, um, I would have asked for some wording to be taken out, because I don't, to your point, Chad, I don't think it should be centered on any particular person. I think the language could have been, the resolution could have been written without the focus on a person. And I think it could have been focused on, you know, you could just use an inanimate object.
Yeah, why not focus on, you know, we stand against political violence.
Right, that's my point. That's what I'm saying. Inanimate object, you know, and I think the problem with, you know, had I been in Congress, that would have been my approach. You know, I can support this, but we don't have to focus on a particular person, even though we know who you're talking about.
Yeah.
But the name, and you know, so I think that's one of the you know, reasons why, and that might be the reason why a lot of people are upset with, you know, Democrats, because, you know, looking at some of the comments online, I mean, they're going in on Hakeem Jeffries. He voted in favor of it. Debbie Dingell voted in favor of it. And she also put out a big statement on why she voted in favor of it. And a lot of people feel that, you know, Democrats are turning their backs on the Black community. But I don't see it that way, because, again, you know, I just would have asked for some concessions with regards to the document.
Now, let me ask you this.
Centered on one person.
But what's the difference between that resolution and the resolutions that we ask for when we have a loved one that passed and we ask our representative to send a resolution to be read at their funeral? What's the difference? And
well, it's a big difference, because they are the current document that has been passed. As Chad stated, they're lionizing a one individual. And I think because of the perspective as it relates to who that person is, you know, I mean, I get it. I mean, I tell people all the time, when you look at the 2024 election, he played a major role in it, in getting Donald Trump reelected. But under the same token, he did not play a singular role, and the assassination of him should have never happened based on speech. And I think the resolution should have been centered more on that we as a country, we as human beings, should not let differences of opinion, be it political ideology or just politics in general, that should not impact someone so badly that they won't go out and kill somebody.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. But will we be having the same conversation about the validity of this this particular document if it was somebody on the other side? If it was Barack Obama, will we be having the same discussion about this document, and should it not been voted on and affirmed? Will we be having the same talk?
No, we wouldn't. And here's why. We wouldn't.
I think we would, Chad. We would.
I don't think we will be having that same conversation, because Barack Obama is a former president of the United States of America. So there would absolutely be a resolution for him, because he served in a capacity as a twice elected president. So that's where there will be that's where there will probably be a significant difference on it, and because of the tangible impact that he had as president, whether you agree with him or disagree with him, right? There was a tangible impact that he had in the lives of people in that leadership role. So yeah, there will be a different conversation around it if that were the person that it happened to. But generally, though, I think that when we talk about political violence, and I think it's very, very hypocritical for people to say we need to condemn political violence. It's very hypocritical because as a country, we are politically violent. As a country, the inception of the United States of America was
predicated on
violence, on political violence, right? Enslavement was political violence. Mass incarceration is political violence. The state-sanctioned extrajudicial killing of people by police is political violence. When we send money to another country to destabilize that nation or support a war or give them weapons, that's exercising political violence. So what are we talking about here? Martin Luther King Jr. was killed over political violence. Malcolm X was killed over political violence. Medgar Evers was killed over political violence. What are we talking about denouncing political violence when political violence is coursing through the veins of this country?
And
let's be honest about it. We don't
talk about that. That's not just America. That's human nature. It's not. And
that's fair.
Human nature. And so when we start talking about what's endemic to America, no, America is not an exception to the rest of the world. So that enslavement that you talked about, it was Africans selling Africans. So
I agree.
Muslims who had the largest slave trade in the world. They was larger than the United States slave trade. So when we start talking about let's make this a whole thing. It's human violence, not just America.
I agree 100%. And that's where I talked at the very beginning, this pro-social versus anti-social violence, right? I think it's important to make that type of a distinction.
Right.
And when we talk about political violence, it can fall on either one of those spectrums. But the idea that we are so high and mighty to condemn political violence while being part and parcel of political violence is just hypocritical.
And that's why I think, again, Chad, some of the wording should have spoke about the high level of disrespect that people are showing towards one another, because not all of it is political violence. A lot of just not respecting and opposing opinion. And I think to your point, Stuart, and you chimed in, Chad, say you don't think it would be a difference. And it'd be a difference from the standpoint you still have political ideology that will have a problem, the right and the left with the same type of resolution if it was given to President Barack Obama. No different than if and when Donald Trump dies, you're gonna have people on the left having an issue if the same type of resolution was passed, unfortunately. Even though the Congress and Senate will pass that resolution, you still will have the majority. Well, I don't guess so, but you still will have a lot of angst from both sides of the aisle.
And that's
on the right and the left. Whoever's being given that resolution, you still gonna have people complaining about it.
And even though he is the president, if they gave the same type of resolution to Donald Trump, it would be people saying he is a deserving of that distinction, even though he's the president. That's why
that's where the political discourse comes in at. And that's that's the difference between political discourse and violence. Yeah, you're still going to have people standing because of the degree at which so many people dislike him. And I won't say hate because that's a strong word to use, but we do know there are a lot of people in this society that do not like him.
But but when you start talking about violence, I agree with my man. It's hypocritical that these politicians talking about this political violence, but have you heard some of their rhetoric, the words that they use, the things that they say about each other and their enemy? And so now it's real hypocritical to me when the violence does happen, but their rhetoric points to that. Their rhetoric, it almost ensures that it's going to happen because they've made their opponent an enemy instead of just somebody that has a different point of view.
I mean, I agree. I mean, you have, I'm not the biggest fan of Jasmine Crockett, but, people going after her based on her interview on CNN. I think, what's the day? Monday, her interview on CNN Saturday, talking about HR 719. But that's another example of people have to be very cognizant of what and who their audience is. And she would never have gone on Fox and said that, but because she was on CNN, For those that
don't watch
CNN, for some, so somehow they know what she said. And I'm talking about, the OANs and the Fox News networks, so they get their information, even though they don't watch those MSNBC or CNN, and it's just too often issues are made out that are non-issues that become issues based on the discourse. I mean,
the thing with Jasmine Crockett, one, she would never been invited on Fox News, but what I detest about that whole situation, there was a response from someone today, Laura Loomer, where she used some incredibly racist and disparaging language about her, right? And regardless of what you feel about Jasmine Crockett, I'm a black man. I'm always going to ride for black women. And so,
brother, I don't always ride with them.
That's fine. You don't have to, but I will. Yeah. And especially if you're talking about them in a racist way like that.
But it's okay.
For me, that's never going to be okay. I can't speak for you or anybody else, but for me, that's never going to be okay.
Something negative about Condoleezza Rice, you rolling with her, or what about Clarence Thomas? You gonna roll with him?
If they're saying racist things,
and which
about a black person,
impunity.
If they're saying racist things about a black, listen, I need you to understand something about me.
Okay.
I'm pro-black first.
Okay, I'm okay.
Across the spectrum, right? If you're doing things that are anti-black,
okay,
then we're gonna have a problem. But if anybody else is outside of that is saying something, yeah, I'm gonna have a problem with that. Full stop. Period.
Because most times,
I'm consistent with mine.
They have the impunity to degrade black people. If they ain't on the right side, and I don't hear no black person coming out to say that they with the black coming out said, you know what, they shouldn't have called Condoleezza Rice Aunt Jemima.
They shouldn't ever.
Yeah, but I didn't hear anybody. I mean, I don't know you. I didn't know you at the time, but I didn't hear any other black person who say that they pro-black defending them calling Condoleezza Rice Aunt Jemima. Don't remember it. They were silent.
I can't speak for anybody else. I'm just saying for me and how I operate, I'm that's never going to sit right with me.
And to your point, Chad, what Robert Johnson did recently, former BT owner, he recently made a $1 million contribution to Winsome Sears, who is a Republican nominee for governor in Virginia, after her white Democratic opponent defamed her in the same manner you're talking about, Chad, and he went to bat for Winsome Sears, and almost verbatim what you said, he's going to ride with the black woman who's very qualified for the position to become governor. She's currently lieutenant governor, and he will not allow someone to speak of her and about her in the manner in which this Democratic candidate did. And to your point, Stuart, that's one of the things that bothers me about the kowtowing to the Democratic Party, because no one that I have heard of within the last 10 days that's a Democrat came to the defense of Winsome Sears of being called out of her name by a white Democrat. And I think far too often we as a people continuously defend Democrats for what they do and speak of us in a negative term. But when a Republican do the same thing, everybody want to bring out the knives and the muskets. And that's just a very inconsistent, hypocritical approach when it comes to supporting a party that can say something bad about us. But when the other party says something bad about us, people want to riot and do all those type of things. So we have to be consistent in defending who we defend that look like us, regardless of what political party they are in. And we do not do that enough.
We don't do that at all. We don't defend black conservatives. Now, I ain't saying that you gotta, agree with them, but we don't defend them. We allow people to say any and everything to them. And just like Sears that's running for the governor of Virginia, it's a lot of black folks that said the worst things about her because she's on the other side and she's a black person that don't deserve to be defended because she's a conservative. And
that's interesting because both her and What's my man in South Carolina? Oh, Tim Scott. Both her and Tim Scott are very pro HBCU and have done a lot for the HBCU community. But because they have an R after their name, they don't get the credit for what they've done for HBCUs. And being a product of an HBCU system, I mean, I don't care if you black, white, green, or purple, Republican, or Democrat. But I tell people all the time, the number one benefactor of Talladega College in Alabama is Bill O'Reilly. A white conservative that a lot of black people do not like is the number one contributor to a HBCU school in little old Talladega, Alabama.
I look at it like this. We can talk trash about our own, but somebody outside the family, you don't get that privilege. That's how I see it.
A little bit different. I don't use the N-word. Well, people that know me use the N-word. I have the same criticism about a black person calling a black person N-word as I do a white person calling it. I just do, because I think it's the most vile word, and we just should not be using. And until there's so many places we need to go as a people and just visit. I mean, I walked across Edmund Pettus Bridge. I've been to Tulsa, Oklahoma. I've been to the Civil Rights Museum in Cincinnati. I've been to the Hanging Museum in Montgomery, Alabama. These are places that we as black people need to go, and I think it will give us a good perspective on using the N-word. That's just my opinion.
That's fair.
So with that being said, I want to thank both of you for joining me this evening. Time flew by, and Chad, I know you'll be on soon with me again when we do the interview with mayoral candidate Ken Locke. I'll lock that in. I can let you know the date. So definitely looking forward to that. And Stuart, you'll be back on, same with the guys in our chat group. We'll do a round table on here one day. So I want to thank both of you for joining me this evening. And enjoy the rest of your week. And again, I'll see you Sunday, Stuart, at the memorial service for our friend Glenn McIntosh.
Absolutely. All right, Eric.
All right. Thanks for having me, man. Appreciate it.
Oh, no problem. Thanks for joining me.
All right.
And to the viewers, I appreciate you for taking time out of your busy schedule for joining us this evening. And until next time, peace and love. And I'm out.